We are the Catalan Independentist Resistance, and you are listening to a new update from Radio Hadrian in Free Catalonia.
Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to Radio Hadrian. This is week 8, and this afternoon I'm really happy that I'm going to be bringing Ian Tuff into the programme. Ian has a social profile known as the Last Jacobite, and he's also quite passionate, very passionate, about a very significant document in Scottish history called the Declaration of Arbroath. Now, rather than me talk about this, I'm going to ask Ian to first of all tell us. Ian, welcome to Radio Hadrian.
Thank you, Delia. It's great to be here.
I have to remember it's not just me talking this week, and I've got somebody else to talk with, which is lovely. Okay, so the Last Jacobite, Ian, can you explain, especially for listeners here in Catalonia, what that's about?
Yes, of course. The Last Jacobite began really during before about 2013, during the build-up to the Scottish referendum. I quite like that term. I coined it the day after the Scottish referendum.
Yes, indeed.
Because that's what we get. We don't get elections anymore. We get selections that are rigged,
yes.
And especially in the independence movement. But the Last Jacobite, I'm from a part of Scotland in the Highlands that was full on for the Jacobites. It was suffered badly in the Highland clearances of punishment, which happened to Scotland after the 1745 Jacobite uprising.
I might interrupt you just for 1 second, Ian. Sorry, because can you tell people from outside Scotland where you're from?
Yes, indeed. I'm from a place called Pewley in the Black Isle, which is slightly north and east of Inverness.
Okay.
It's God's own country.
I thought Australia was that, actually.
No. I could tell you several stories. No, but yes, I'm from. You can get more Highland if you like. I'm a Highlander's Highlander.
Good.
So yes, so I mentioned the Jacobite uprising of 1745. To just give your folks over there, Delia, a kind of brief history. We had Scotland was an independent country for well over 1,000 years, and despite England attempting several times to take us by force, by rough way, by various means, Scotland, by hook or by crook, has been an independent country for over 1,000 years until 1707. 1707, after they had basically persuaded the Stuart king to take on the throne of England, and they deposed him. Now, the thing was that Scots weren't really that bothered about the Stuart king, but what it did was it protected Scotland's sovereignty. After the English deposed Charles II and brought in a German monarch, that effectively should have broken the Act of Union. However, we had traitors even back then who was the old form of Scots government called the Three States. They're the folks who signed into law the Act of Union, and they're the folks who accepted the later Union of the Crowns, both of which go directly against the Declaration of Arbroath, which I'll get to. So the significance of the 1745 is that they deliberately chose 45% for yes in their referendum as number just to stick it to because of the 1745 Jacobite Act.
The significance, yes. And of course that was the Battle of Culloden, wasn't it?
Indeed, that's correct. It ended disastrously with the Battle of Culloden,
yes,
which was the last battle to be fought on British mainland soil.
Yes. Actually, in a previous programme on Radio Hadrian, I talked about that. So some people who speak English and can recall that, because I talked about the Culloden, and that in that same year, Catalonia also lost its independence. And not the same year, the same century. So yes, Scotland and Catalonia lost their independence, while France became independent.
Well, it was a great social movement of the time, and they were all extremely scared popular uprisings and revolutions at the time, and I guess that's why they were so brutal in putting down any uprisings, but also they then amalgamated their power and made sure nothing like that would happen again.
Yes.
So the last Jacobite, as I say, came from the fact that I've always been a rebel, even in school. And,
Likewise.
so I set the page up really just to cheerlead for the Scottish independence referendum. Somewhere along the line of that, it became more and more clear that we were being sold down the river again. And the day before the referendum, I started hearing rumours. The night of the referendum, we had Ruth Davidson, who was leader of the Bear Together, High Up Bear Together, sat on BBC television, and the first thing out of her mouth, as soon as the cameras went to her, at the start of the programme was, "We've won, we've sampled the postal vote."
Yes.
That's illegal.
Yes.
And despite being reported to the police on numerous occasions, nothing's ever been done about that.
No.
And no politician has raised one word.
And furthermore, Humza Yousaf was sitting right next to her and didn't bat an eyelid.
Indeed. So after that, the next morning I coined the term referendum, and boy did I start to find out about the SNP and just how badly we are being sold down the river by them.
Mm-hmm.
They are not a party of independence, they are a unionist party. Their leader is a member of the Queen's Privy Council and has sworn an oath to uphold the Union and the Crown. Now, you can't get much more silly than that. And yet in Scotland we still have way too many people who are drinking the SNP Kool-Aid of this idea that somewhere down the line we'll have another referendum and it'll be better. No, Joe Stalin said, doesn't matter who votes or what they vote for, it only counts who counts the votes.
That's a good quote. Okay, so this is the last Jacobite, and this is your main social profile on social media.
Indeed, and people will can find my stuff there. I've recently allowed one or two others to post there, so we're now the last Jacobites, which is not a bad thing.
The last Jacobites, we're plural now.
We're plural now.
Right.
Yes, as I said in one of my posts, I may be the last Jacobite, but there are thousands of seeds and seedlings out there.
Good. That's it. Okay. Right. I'm going to put a link to, or at least mention that on our Radio Hadrian's Facebook page, so that people can join you and learn more about this as we head towards whenever the next referendum is going to be, if ever and whenever, and follow that carrot that gets dangled in front.
So very briefly, that was Ian Tough, the last Jacobite, who has been talking to us about the Declaration of Arbroath and the Jacobite movement in Scotland and the significance of both of those. It was interesting to hear Ian say that whether you agree with him or not, it was still interesting to hear a point of view that suggests the Declaration of Arbroath has relevance or potential relevance for declaring independence here in Catalonia. Listening to Ian gave me some ideas about future programmes, and one thing was that there are many different viewpoints. There are a lot of disgruntled people in Scotland and here in Catalonia with regards to independence movements, their respective independence movements. And a lot of people are lost, I think, particularly in Scotland after the referendum of 2014. There is much, infighting isn't quite the right word, but there's squabbling. There are people setting up groups left, right and centre on social media. New parties start up and then they fold because if the SNP doesn't support them, the SNP makes sure that they close down. And of course, there's always the likelihood, the very real likelihood that some of these new parties and groups are indeed being set up by the SNP. So what I thought I would like to do would be to invite people, and I'm open to suggestions, please, if you have any ideas, or if you would like to, if you have a party or a group that has been going since either the 2014 referendum or before then, because we can go way back to 2011 to the local council elections, which were a phenomenal success for the SNP. And we can go as far back as we want, but I don't really want individuals coming on with individual viewpoints. We don't have time to do that. I need people who represent groups or who have set up and registered a party in response to the dissatisfaction. And I think that I mentioned a few weeks ago, I think it was in week 4, when I mentioned about a possible split in the SNP, a split coming from within the ranks of disgruntled members, very senior members. I'm talking Kenny McGaskill, Alex Neil, and Tommy Shepherd. And the real possibility that there could be a split from within the ranks that could lead to a splinter party being set up, which will then say, no, we'll take you to independence. We'll lead you. You don't need to all set up your own little parties. We'll be the grassroots party. And of course, that would be the perfect way of stopping people taking control of this themselves. But I also think that would also be another case of the SNP being the SNP. And as we said in this program, why would you vote? Why would you encourage people to vote you out of a job? So the only way I believe we're going to get independence is through the people taking control of their own destiny, whether that is by using the Declaration of Arbroath as a basis or other forms of declaring independence. I'm not giving answers. I just want to hear different viewpoints, because there doesn't appear to be any platform for different viewpoints to come together. On the social media, as I'm sure plenty of you know, there's a lot of fighting, there's a lot of nasty behaviour, which I absolutely abhor, and it does not represent me as a Scot. It doesn't represent a lot of the people I respect in the independence movement, people like Ian Tough. There's a lot of nastiness that takes place, and it generally comes from I have to say this, it comes from the SNP blinded, blinkered, die-hard supporters, many of whom have only come on board since the referendum in 2014. And there's a nasty side to social media. However, this platform is not really social media. I know we do have our YouTube channel, but this is not really social media. This is a true platform to offer a voice for people to give their opinion, speak their mind. We're going to have some roundtable discussions. As you heard Ian and I discussing briefly there, we're contemplating setting up a UDI platform and having a panel or a roundtable discussion, whatever you like to call it. Anyway, I'm going to put some links up on the Facebook page to things that Ian mentioned, particularly the Declaration of Arbroath. I'm going to put a copy of it up there for you, including a rather lovely version of it, an audio version of it, which is quite powerful and quite stirring. Ironically, the SNP also use the Declaration of Arbroath at their conferences. How about that? Thank you very much for listening, and have a great afternoon. Enjoy the weather wherever you are in the world, and look forward to speaking with you next week. Okay, thanks everybody. Bye.
Good afternoon to the people listening to us from Scotland and Catalonia. I'm David Raventós, and this is Chapter 8 of Radio Adrian. As always, we keep encouraging you to spread this program by all means, because this is the program that both Westminster and Madrid don't want you to listen. After this program today, Delia and me, we're taking a short break, a break that has several reasons for coming into being, apart from Barcelona being typical holiday month here in August. But basically, we need to think how to bring this program further. This has to be a piece in the peaceful revolution that both Catalonia and Scotland need to undergo to bring independence both to Catalonia and Scotland, and that to be a little step to making this planet a better place for us and for our children. So we need to take it further within the format. We are bringing in interviews, probably panels. We need to rehearse on new themes, because we're not professionals of this, and bringing out a program every week is taxing. And we also open it to people who might like to help us in investigating. We're tackling the power of the world here, and there's chapters waiting for us. Today we're gonna go on about WikiLeaks, but we won't be able to go in depth in everything WikiLeaks means nowadays. But we want to start debunking it, because, as usual, it's not what they have told us it is. But if you feel like investigating, if you have one particular field of which you're an expert or you have an interest with, we have to go on about things like how they use psychiatry or the truth behind AIDS or lots of things both in Catalonia and Scotland that the people in our countries and in the rest of the world needs to know. But as I said, this rest is also necessary because both Delia and me have been part of a very big fight against the powers that be, and this requires some regrouping. Also, this program being important is not the only thing happening. I mean, there's a political movement, there's books we are planning, and there's other things. And we need to make sure that this program is listened to by thousands of people so we can make a change. So thanks for having put up with us for these 8 chapters. Hopefully we find you again back in September. And today I would like to go on about the things going on in Catalonia with this supposed 1st of October referendum. And normally the show will increase because everybody needs not to realize that referendum never brings independence, because the only way to independence is unilateral declaration of independence. So they need to keep us dumbed down, and every day there has to be a show so people don't focus on the basics. So we're gonna talk about Neymar, but this is not a sports program, so the approach we will have, as always, will be slightly a tad different than what you get from mainstream press. We'll go on talk about Carles Puigdemont, that has said that he's ready to go to prison. I was about to say for independence, but no, he's about to go to prison or he's ready to go to prison for a referendum, which actually makes the mockery bigger. I will also comment on Josep Maria Tericabras, which is a member of European Parliament, which is saying that he's considering doing a hunger strike, again, not for independence, but for the referendum. And sorry to say, but it's one of these clear moments of saying, been there, done that myself, so we'll go briefly into this. We also will talk about some article about Jordi Manyà, which is a member of Assemblea Nacional Catalana, which is supposed to be the grassroots movements going for independence. And finally, we'll go on how Coop has attacked a touristic bus and burst the wheels in the bikes that serve to move in Barcelona, and a bit more on what Coop means in this process. And then we'll go into the main thing this week, which is about trying to debunk WikiLeaks. And this is a huge task, and no matter how we've tried to keep up with books and things this week, but it's a mammoth task that will require picking it up some other time. So thanks for being with us here. As always, please share. Try to make this program reach everywhere, because when it does, the truth will set us free. The first thing I want to go about is Neymar Jr. Neymar Jr. has broken a record in football transfers, being selling people. It's a weird term, but English is not my first language. So he's been transferred to Paris Saint-Germain, which is funny because the biggest game last year was Barcelona 6, Paris Saint-Germain 1, and in that game Neymar was the star. But in the end, Barca did nothing in Champions League, but it has served him to sign this contract, so good for him. It's a difficult theme here in Barcelona. As you know, FC Barcelona is more known than any politician or anything else from Catalonia worldwide, which on itself, it kind of shows the kind of problem we're going on about in the world. I'm also offended by the amount of money that moves in football, but I'm not gonna do demagoguery, if that is a word in English, or use populistic arguments on how. Of course, there's millions of people suffering everywhere in the world, and it's a shame that all this money goes into. But if we don't look at the bigger picture, we won't be able to really change this planet for us or our children. Football is an important piece of the system to dumb us down. It is very important for the system, and if we remember what we said about Leo Strauss, about 99% of the population not being able to understand the hard truths on this world, football is a big part of the show. There's more than 1,000 million people in the planet follow football. So they need different ways to have us all dumbed down so we don't see the things before our very eyes. So some people are dumbed by sports, another sector by popular culture or gossip, or then we also have gossip politics. I mean, there's very important things as why so-called political independentist parties, both in Scotland and Catalonia, don't declare independence when they could do so. So they need all kind of things. It starts with education, and I think I'm not going to go down in this field because that's Delia's expertise. But we enter a factory. Educational systems don't seem to be made to have us more intelligent or informed, but to dumb us down and make us obedient parts of this system. But I'm not going to go in depth, as I said. But that's it. We need to be controlled. So what I'll say is, if Neymar is going to a nice city like Paris and it's going to be number one there, which is something he couldn't be while Messi is here. Another approach, which is local, and then I won't go in detail with, but the owner of Paris Saint-Germain comes from Qatar and is part of the running regime there. So it's very funny because it's interesting how they can have two conflicting ideas in our minds, and they have bugged our brains in a way that we don't see it coming. So on one way, there's calls for blockade of Qatar and Al Jazeera having to close down, and Qatar being the bad guys who are financing ISIS. But on the other hand, there Qatar has the rights to be in, which has rights for for broadcasting football, and they run PSG, and that's it. So how can both things be true at the same time? That's something that has a tiny link with 11th of September, which we will do once. How can it be that they blame Qatar for financing terrorism, and they say that planes flew into the towers in 2001, and then you have Qatari companies flying cool as a cucumber into the United States? Well, if there was any truth that somebody can go and use Qatari planes to provoke mayhem in the United States, they wouldn't be allowed to fly in, isn't it? So there's something utterly wrong here. But the last thing I want to approach about Neymar, which doesn't have to do with football, is because the most in program in Catalonia in the last days has been a so-called documentary, which is about more or less like the gutter of the Spanish government, where there is supposed to be telling the bad things that Spain is doing against independentists. Well, I know better than most that only brushes off the surface of what they do. But the funny thing is that they purported this as a censored documentary and something that was almost clandestine and you couldn't see it. Well, it was projected in the top spot in Catalan television. It's been the most seen program this month in Catalonia. So if that is censorship, please, can you please censorship me more? Can you please do that? And can you also please censor and tell about our fight in primetime in TV3? Thanks. And the guy who did this documentary happens to be the partner with the owner of Paris Saint-Germain. So then again, we have been manipulated in our brain that we can have two conflicting ideas where normally we could only hold one. You cannot both be indignated with this documentary, which is supposed to be censored, and then hate the guys that take Neymar away from Barcelona because, surprise, surprise, it happens to be the same guys. So we need to investigate a bit more and see who's behind things and see that Jaume Roures and MediaPro don't work for the good guys. So when they put a documentary, it's to dumb us down and to act as gatekeepers or limited hangouts They tell us a tiny thing Spain does to protect the big secret. So that was Neymar. As I said, things are non-stop in Catalonia because we have this mock of a referendum the 1st of October. So every day things have to happen, not to let us think that we have a majority with a mandate for independence in Catalan parliament that doesn't declare it. So today we're not independent, not because of Madrid very bad guys or because anything you can imagine, but because 72 women and men, supposedly independentists, don't do what any real independentist would have done almost 2 years ago. So then they need to dump us down. And this, as the day gets closer, it's only going to get worse. So this week we have several names, and I'll try not to bore you with them, but it's important. Sometimes it's easier to learn on someone else's head than realize what goes on in your own country. Carles Puigdemont is the president in Catalonia. We already explained in previous chapters in Radio Hadrian how he only got there because a combination of accidents happened in his career. Carles Mascort and his family being threatened in 2006, which kind of paved the way for him being mayor of Girona. Then he sets up a newspaper with Stephen Bergen, without realizing that Stephen Bergen happens to be the worst anti-Catalan to live in Spain, apart from being in the payroll of Murdoch, and somebody capable of saying that the worst unionist in Catalonia, who's also a xenophobic person, to make him pass as an independentist. So, and it happened in the Guardian that we'll mention later in relation to WikiLeaks. So everything which seems local, it has global reach as well. So Carles Puigdemont, who is president because he has, very funnily, 3,000 people gathered together in a splinter party called goo.gl, of which more later, and they draw 1,515 to 1,515. And then, bang, he becomes president of Catalonia. Well, maybe you believe in fairy tales. Maybe you are one of these people who thought that Lance Armstrong, being just a middle of the road, pun not intended, cyclist, and then after recovering from very severe cancer, he goes not just to survive, not just to barely keep doing his profession, not just to recover his previous level, not just to get better than he was before, but he, by that stroke of fairy tale, he apparently had become the best cyclist of all times. Well, some of us, sorry to say it, had been warning that Lance Armstrong had to be a fraud, and now it has been vindicated, that with the truth. So yes, conspiracies do exist, and it's been clarified that it was a mafia organization threatening other cyclists and extensive program for doping. So yes, we prefer to believe these fairy tales, and also Carles Puigdemont is supposed to have met his wife in a theater show, and then we saw how Ada Colau met her now partner while both were dressed as Batman and Robin and defending the rights of people with a house. These fairy tales we like to believe. Okay, so now we believe that Carles Puigdemont reached to power when really he's just a Spanish puppet. Well, Carles Puigdemont has said this week that he's ready to go to prison to defend the referendum. And I better than others can say that is nothing heroic. First, because referendum is a way not to declare independence unilaterally. So, no, nothing done for independence there. But secondly, when you're facing Spain that has murdered people with Franco, the American genocide, or Philip IV or the Fifth, or not to mention Spanish Inquisition, well, being ready to go to prison is not exactly heroic, no? It's mandatory. It's the minimum thing. But on that, Carlos, I remember very well when the 3rd of May, I handed you the leaflet about my hunger strike. And you, surrounded by your bodyguards, you hid with your very shy smile and kind of cowering into your very well protected car. So maybe you can lie to a lot of people with different levels of information, experience, and intelligence, and they can believe that you're a hero because you're ready to go to prison for a referendum. but I know better, Carlos. If you want to know how it feels to be incarcerated because of your ideas and because of your will to be independent, give me a call. I've been waiting. On the same line, we have Josep Maria Tericabras, which is an independent, but in there by Esquerra Republicana de Catalunya. He's a member of the European Parliament. And this week he said that he's considering doing a hunger strike. Not for independence. I need to correct, and it's important to repeat these things. Referendum and independence is the same thing as guillotine and eternal life. And I don't mean eternal life in the afterlife. I mean like referendum don't bring about independence. We've already clarified this in previous chapters, and we're not going to go into this now. So referendum is what Spain wants. So everybody is saying that they're going to go out of the way to make sure the referendum happens. They're wolves in sheep's skin. Okay? But then again, Josep Maria, who are you trying to mock? Your party knew very well. Oriol Junqueras, the president of your party and deputy prime minister, and the president of Catalonia that Spain has already handpicked, ran away when I was telling him about my hunger strike. Joan Tardà feigned not to know about my hunger strike, and then he was proven wrong by all the youngsters around him who knew about me. Your party ignored me and let it happen, if not collaborated directly in me being incarcerated, tortured, mislabeled, and pushed towards suicide, which hadn't it been for the help of my family, but mainly my partner Delia, would have been a possibility, which never was. So, Josep Maria, again, and I'm sorry, since I'm repeating myself, but if you really want to know what it is to do a hunger strike for your party, for your ideas, or for the independence of Catalonia, just also give me a call. It would be very nice, and maybe you can donate your almost 10,000 euros a month for not doing much in European Parliament, as you're not going to spend a lot in food. Maybe you can either sponsor this program or do something really useful for independence. Because getting a fat check and then saying that you're considering doing a hunger strike, that's not it. We then again, I'm sorry there's a lot of Joseps, Carles, and Jordis, and it will keep you approaching to Catalan things. But then Jordi Manyà, who's one of the leaders of Assemblea Nacional Catalana, which is the grassroots movement for independence, seems to have done a declaration saying that the ballots, I won't give you the details here, it's a monkey business every day. But now there's a big thing about if we can buy the ballot boxes to do the referendum. Historians will laugh at us or will mock us, but this is a big thing. Well, he's supposed to have been recorded, and it's something that has happened a few times already. That the ballot boxes are in a consulate in Barcelona hidden, which is not very intelligent to tell and to be recorded about. So we're still waiting for him to complain and say it's not him. But he also says things. This guy is supposed to be a university professor. The amount of university professors that work for our enemy is huge, because normally it's an important field to control. This person has said that Scotland cannot help because it belongs to England. Well, somebody who's a fighter for independence cannot. First, you cannot change UK by England. I mean, that's something that you can accept in a 7-year-old. But you cannot set it in a professor in university. But second, Scotland belongs to nobody. Scotland belongs to its people, and these people will deliver independence. And then he also goes on to say that, that idiot Assange and whatever. So this guy, Jordi Manyà, cannot be representing Catalan independence 1 second more. We have enough incompetent people running this show, so we don't have space for anyone more. The last thing on this field before we go on to WikiLeaks is Arran, the youth branch of CUP, that party that drew 250-100 things to usher Puigdemont in, so everything is related, has livened the way to the referendum this week by kind of puncturing the tires in a touristic bus in Barcelona, and also puncturing the tires of Bicing, which is the bike for rent system that serves a lot of people to move around Barcelona. And they use something which is normal, because a lot of people has had enough of the way tourism is taking over the capital of Catalonia, But there's ways and there's ways. And this has brought problems between CUP and the main running party. Arran, part of CUP, we'll go into depth with CUP after the break, after the summer break. But it isn't just to bring bad reputation to the indie movement. And that's about it. So you see, in Catalonia, it's a circus at this moment. And well, most of the circus will tell you about when we come back in the run-up to the referendum. You know, both Catalan and Scottish politics and the world politics are like the Truman Show or like a film. So now we're getting the end of the film, which for us is 1st of October. So we expect the film to get better and better as the day comes close. And now, well, and to finish now, and I got carried away, so it's going to be brief introduction onto what WikiLeaks means. We all know what WikiLeaks means and how it is supposed to have change and give us an opportunity to counter the powers that be. But sadly, again, that is not the case. I've been reading in detail the book of Daniel Domscheit-Berg, which was supposed to be the co-founder of WikiLeaks with Julian Assange, and well, it goes briefly saying that he denies that this is a honeypot, but after what I've learned, that is for me to be the case, and we'll go in depth in other chapters. But basically, and the reasons for it are, WikiLeaks hasn't changed the world at all. It has published mainly things that we knew through other sources. Most of the information is only classified confidential or secret, but nothing there is top secret. So one thing is like, lots of things were already known through other sources. Secondly, no top secret information. Third, it's very necessary. The whole show is based on very expensive communication media. The world, as we know, thanks to people like Udo Ulfkote, media are not to be trusted. And how comes that WikiLeaks has got a prize from Amnesty International? They mentioned that they might be getting the Nobel Prize, and they have friends like George Soros. Well, these three things belong mainly to the system, to everybody knowing. So if there were real dissidents, Amnesty International wouldn't touch them with a barge pole, George Soros wouldn't be around, and the mention of Nobel Prize wouldn't exist. But the main thing, it's two main things here. Julian Assange says that he doesn't like people going on the 9/11 conspiracy. Well, there's conspiracies that are true around. Well, that's the main reason. There's two main reasons for setting up WikiLeaks is a psyop operation. It's brilliant. If it wasn't so dirty, it would be brilliant. So now you have every dissident in the world that brings it directly to WikiLeaks, which then only needs to pass it on to their superiors in the secret services to decide if that person needs to be silenced, terminated, or any other word you want to use, neutralized. So it's brilliant. You set up a big Hollywood show where you accuse Julian Assange of rape, but you do it so blatantly wrong that you use two women that have such obvious links with anti-castrism and CIA in Florida that you don't need to be a high-tech technician with internet to realize that it's double jeopardy. You accuse him through people that are so easy to find, to make a hero of him. And then him, and I have to say sadly, and we go another day, we're going to do a 9/11 program, and we're going to do a program explaining what gatekeepers and limited hangouts are, which is people that tell you part of the truth to keep a bigger secret. Julian Assange, and sadly also people like Noam Chomsky, mentioned the term conspiracy theory to shut up the word of the critics. I'm sorry, but we already explained that this was a concept developed by the CIA in 1967 to silence dissidents. So Assange or Chomsky, they might not agree with 9/11, which in the case of Julian Assange, it's impossible, because if people with 1 millionth of the information he has we have found evidence that 9/11 was not what they say it to be. It is impossible that Julian Assange and WikiLeaks don't know. So the two main reasons for setting up WikiLeaks are getting dissidents to handle their information directly to those who want to fight, which is perverse. But secondly, the main objective of WikiLeaks is to be there to keep us calm. If WikiLeaks don't talk about 9/11, it's because it was not an inside job. When WikiLeaks don't talk about the Scottish rigging, it's because it didn't happen. When WikiLeaks don't talk about the Catalan rig process, it's because it didn't happen. Finally, the links of WikiLeaks with Gavin McFadden, and I'm sorry because he's not alive to defend or to counter me anymore. I spoke with Gavin McFadden in the end of 2013 on the phone and told him how I had found out that very relevant people in Catalonia are working for the other side, and that would be a huge scandal. How 7.5 million people had been deceived by their own leaders, and he betrayed me. He told me to send everything, names and everything, and then never contact me anymore. And considering that people that have been attacking me had pushed me to get in contact with WikiLeaks, I can only assume that these people, which I have since found out to be workers for the New World Order, they were pushing me to go to WikiLeaks to silence me. So we'll go in depth about this, but WikiLeaks is a psyop. They have links with Soros and people who are working for the bad guys, and that also has links with the Panama Papers and this Bureau of Investigative Journalists and Center for Investigative Journalists, which were run by Gavin McFadden, and which they have produced things that haven't changed the world either. So all these big organizations that they say they're gonna change the world, but then they don't, are actually psyops or limited hangouts or gatekeepers, you call it, to prevent the truth to come out. And with this, we give you a break for a few weeks. We also enjoy it. Please spread these programs so the world starts to leak. Thanks. Guanyarem.
This has been another update from the Catalan Independentist Resistance from Radio Hadrian. Remember that you can follow us on social media, either on Facebook, YouTube, our Twitter account, Instagram, Google, Telegram, and also on iVoox.